Hey guys, it's Ryan, and today's video is going to be a general purpose purchase guide for getting into Infinity. It will break down the commonly used terms of what you'll hear when you're getting into the game. It will be as close to a universal guide as I feel I can give, in that it will give you all of the information of what is what, and it will be up to you to apply that given information. Not every faction has identical needs or wants, but there are some rhymes and rhythms when getting into the game. I'm not going to talk about paint or terrain, but the general themes you'll hear and what you need to know, and the terms the community will use a lot when list building and recommending purchases. This is not all encompassing, but I am considering doing a jargon busting video in the future. With that, let's get on with it. And remember, if you like the video, like and subscribe for more. As with all of my purchase guides, this can be made redundant fairly quickly at the whims of Corvus Belli, such as my Military Orders one and my Caledonia one, now that things are going out of production and or have been collated into bigger boxes. Also, feel free to ignore this advice as you see fit. If you see a model you love and it makes the monkey part of your brain fire and delight, buy it, paint it, love it, maybe play it. Probably get it shot off the table instantly. I'm looking at you, my entire Caledonian collection. I'm going to assume you know how to save some money in your hobbies, but I'll talk about some tips that I use specifically, but common sense is key here. Finally, for my disclaimers, is that proxying is a big thing in Infinity. Not every model is in production and not every profile has a model. So keep this in mind. Strict WYSIWYG is not happening, but you can sort of get away with it being largely correct, but just maybe not the right weapons. Some factions can do this if they're relatively recent and well supported, but yeah, keep in mind proxying as you look into stuff to buy and are being given recommendations. Since this is a general purchase guide, then if you want more specific details, you're going to need to look elsewhere for exactly what you might want to buy for a given faction. But here are some tips for other guides. First off, YouTube. There are a few faction breakdowns out there that will help you point you in the right direction. It wouldn't be a video for me if I didn't plug what my own channel covers, which is Caledonia, Cosmoflot, and Military Orders pre-reinforcements. Although this video will come out post-reinforcement, so who knows what will change, as I'm writing this in late July. Anyway, Cavrion has some videos on Steel Phalanx. Older outdated videos such as Concilium Watch and Vol LC help, but haven't been updated. Other Infinity YouTubers like Infinity Gamer covers Military Orders, Morats and Starmada as well. Podcasts are also a good source of information. They're not my thing, but the bigger ones are Guerrilla Miniature Games, Tactical Awareness and Whip 12. These do cover factions and may help you figure out what you need to know. Blogs and websites exist for written guidance. Goonhammer, Under the Borak Sun, the Infinity Forums. Go there at your own risk though. Beyond Human, Substack and much more that I'm not aware of. There are also various Discord for factions and metas as well, and that brings a lot of collective experience, but at the same time lots of loud opinions. Facebook groups exist as well, both locally and nationally, and that may also contain some good knowledge. Many won't just give straight up buying guides, however, but definitely have developed a pretty solid collection of recommendations for newer players. So trying before you buy is very much a thing in Infinity, ranging from a bunch of wooden blocks thanks to the great silhouette system, borrowing from other people's minis, and Tabletop Simulator. I won't wax lyrical about it, but it's a good place to try list before you buy it if you can stomach the whole computer thing. But TTS is also a meta of its own with its own tables and list requirements. So a big pinch of salt, but it helps getting started. Having the ability to know what you want to buy is a major boon, as it not only saves you money, but makes each purchase feel like a step towards a good goal. So go play some games and figure out what you like, be it on TTS, borrowing or proxy models. Getting value for money for your kits is pretty simple. More models per box tend to be a slightly better value, unless it's 4 unwanted models and 1 wanted one. But even then, that's 4 proxies and 1 good unit, glass being half full and all that. I do personally do this quite often enough, and it helps me make multi-faction boxes much better value for money. But in general, single blisters for a human odd size model is about €15 or less depending on the age of the model and the amount of metal used. It seems to be about 25 to 35 for 2 models, and maybe even the upper end of that if they have lots of gubbins like koalas and peripherals. 35 to 50 for 3 models, again depending on how new, then about 50ish for 4 models. When we move up to the action packs of 8 models, we see the price being about 80 odd euros. In general, the trend never really drops below €10 per model, but hovers around 12ish. But the bigger boxes tend to be a bit better value for money per mini. Another good way to get value for money is second-hand lots, since you're likely to get most of what you're looking for and more if you're patient and lucky with eBay and Facebook searching. Alternatively, you can get a good size lots for decent prices. I got a large amount of Caledonia for like 120 quid, but I've seen Verd and Svalheim and Winterforce go for around 200 and 250 pounds. Another great way to get good value for Infinity models is that there is a good few split box services around these days which allow you to get individual miniatures you want or need for a cheaper rate than buying the full box. They tend to be limited in what they offer, but they also usually have a full store alongside this service, so you can do some regular Infinity shopping as well. Final way is to just shop in the right place. First and foremost is to check your local game store. They may offer discounts in Infinity, and supporting them also tends to support a play space as well. Following that, most online retailers will offer a discount as well, and maybe more likely as a whole to have the models you want as there are more of them. Finally, if you're in Europe and it's economically viable for you to do so, you can order from Corvus Belli directly, as they are guaranteed to have stock of a model. However, it will be at recommended retail price, so you're trading any sort of discount for that reliability in stock. Now we know where we're buying from, what do we need to buy, and what are these things we keep hearing about. So the first one is action packs, and these are your best way to get into Infinity, besides the 2-player versus boxes, which eventually just become action packs. Why? Well, they basically bring all the things you need for an Infinity list in a box, like line troopers, skirmishers, heavy hitters, and specialists. Honestly, most of a list, to be honest. The box comes with 9 models, although the older ones come with 6 and are cheaper, 60 versus 90 euros for the newer ones. Many people will suggest this as you get into a faction, although if you enter via Code 1, it may not line up with the profiles there. Just check with your local community for more. Vanilla and generic armies don't tend to have specific modern action packs with 9 models in it, but it is possible to get into a vanilla with some action packs and proxying. The Military Orders action pack won't be good for vanilla Pan-Oceania, but the Code 1 action pack and the Verona box might be a bit better. The fact you get so many units also means you can proxy them pretty well. I often recommend proxying parts of the Military Order action pack as other profiles, so newer players can get more cohesive lists sooner. I feel like I'm really underselling action packs, but they really are the on-ramp to the game, and they really only don't give you dice and terrain. So if you find one for your faction, pick it up unless it's pretty old. So cheerleaders / line troopers are basically your chumps at the back that you need to make a list and have enough orders to make it work. Keep in mind I'm largely a sectorial player as I explain this, but what's true regardless is every army needs orders. It's an undeniable fact about Infinity, and it's the game's greatest strength and weakness to some armies. In order to get as much of this lifeblood as possible, you're gonna need cheap bodies to get those orders, and that's what your line troopers and cheerleaders are here to do. They tend to stand in the back, providing orders or cheering on your big guys to go forward and do other things, or support them providing overwatch. These are profiles like Fusiliers, Ghulams, Grunts. They're usually light infantry, but can be medium infantry or rems like the Flash Pulse, Baggage, or Sensor bots. They usually sit behind and don't really do much until they need to activate, but they can bulk up fire teams. You get these as a couple of forms, as part of an action pack, which is great, SWC weapon boxes for the troopers, and rem boxes. We'll talk about the rems in a minute. Usually if you're starting with an action pack, you'll get a good few of these line troopers with basic rifles, which for giving orders and support is more than enough. So if you bought an action pack, you have 3 of these basic guys, but sometimes you'll need one more, or maybe you need 1 or 2 with some big guns like a HMG, a missile launcher, sniper, or a hacker version. And this is where the SWC boxes come in. This is a community term for boxes of models that basically only contain these special profiles of a unit. So in the Fusilier or Ghulam box, we'll see that they have HMGs, missile launchers, snipers, and hacker profiles get a model. Will you take these? Quite possibly at least 1. This is where it comes down to faction recommendations. Vanilla / generic armies are unlikely to use more than 3 line troopers unless they do something really special or have 4 different line trooper options. In sectorials you may need 4 or 5 for running fire teams. In panel sectorials, it's very likely to run 5-man Fusilier/Regulars or Crozier fire teams thanks to their stats. However, in Haqqislam and Ariadna and Nomads, you're much less likely as they have better options that can sub into these fire teams and bring their own SWC weapons to fill that role over a Cheerleader/Line Trooper. So a Cheerleader SWC box is something that I can say is an option, but it's double check if it's worthwhile in your faction. However, if this is your only way to get hold of your line infantry and you need them, then they work well enough. SWC boxes aren't just for line troopers like Fusiliers. You often see it referred to any unit that has special weapons like HMGs, Spitfires and missile launchers, etc. So you can and do get medium infantry and heavy infantry SWC boxes, and these are far more useful in factions as these will be your active pieces, your heavy hitters. These are far more likely to be recommended, so keep that in mind. So yeah, in general, getting line troopers and cheerleaders are often required, but can be found, fortunately, pretty easily in action packs and SWC boxes. You might get told if you're buying into a faction that isn't Spiral Corps, Toha, or more importantly Ariadna, to go ahead and buy some REMs for your faction. But what are these REMs? There are two types of these support REMs to consider when starting a faction, unless you're the Combined Army. Silhouette 3 and Silhouette 4 REMs. What is this Silhouette 3, Silhouette 4? Well, that's the base size and the mechanical height of the model. So unfortunately, one cannot be proxied easily as the other while getting into the game, but that's okay. It can help you keep them pretty separate in your mind and avoid confusion. Importantly, most factions, bar a couple, have additional REMs that are these silhouette sizes, but usually aren't what people are talking about when they say to go and buy some REMs, but it might be nice to pick these ones up later. So your Silhouette 3 REMs are a set of 4 very useful profiles that at least one of them is going to be in your list. These are represented in the army by 4 separate units, whereas bought as one box containing 2 models. These REMs will have an option to make a flash pulse bot, a cheerleader and good defensive piece, a rifle to make a sensor bot, a useful toolbox unit, a heavy machine gun to make a total reaction bot, which is another solid defensive piece, and finally a missile pod to make a missile bot or GML bot to act as artillery or buffed into an ARO piece. These fill separate roles in your army, but people often are confused on what kit goes to what profile or what box to buy. Really, it's a bit of a confused marketing message by Corvus Belli. So what you're looking for is the box titled X Remote Pack. To find the profiles in army, you're going to want to look under REMs and look for those with that X in their name. In panel, we see the Drone Bot Remote Pack and the 4 profiles with drone bots in their name, being the Pathfinder, Sierra, Fugazi and the Clipper. They may also have little numbers in the logo, which is another way to find these 4 loadouts. Since the weapons are the only difference between the models, my recommendation for buying these is pick your favourite looking gun, add it to the bot, paint it up and proxy the crap out of these 2 models between the 4 profiles. Silhouette 4 bots as a whole are pretty varied, but if people are telling you to buy these ones, they tend to be the baggage bots or some gunfighters like the Vostok, Arm bots or Rudda. Fortunately, they are denoted pretty well by their name being exactly the same in the store and in army. Sticking with Pan-Oceania, our Silhouette 4 baggage bots are mule bots. They provide an army with baggage, which allows reloading of disposable weapons, an Evo Hacker, which provides supports to your troops, and the Combi Rifle Total Reaction Bot, which is a short-range defensive piece. Both Silhouette 3 and Silhouette 4 REMs are pretty useful and worth picking up eventually, but hopefully this clears up what these recommendations are. Tags are an undeniable fact of Infinity, and you may want to buy one. However, like REMs, they come in 2 or 3 different sizes, Silhouette 6, 7 and 8. This means you can't proxy them all interchangeably, but only some. The other thing to note is the newer ones can be a bit cheaper than the older ones, but that's because they are in a thermoplastic resin and has been a bit hit or miss for the community. So be aware of this, but fortunately Corvus Belli has great customer service, and keep your blue tickets. Dire Foes Support Expansion Fireteam and Reinforcement Packs are multi-model boxes you can get from Corvus Belli, each offering something a little different and are definitely worth looking at as you're buying into a faction. Dire Foe boxes have been on a bit of a decline recently, but still exist as of writing. These are simply 3 model boxes containing 2 characters, one from 2 different sectorials, and a third model that is a HVT, or basically an objective model for most missions. These characters tend to be okay and range from Jazz, who is pretty bonkers, to Bipandra, who is very clearly a first attempt at this. This is one I recommend you split, or hope you get lucky and find a use for proxying the other character as something else in your faction or selling it on. You do sort of need it for the HVT, so it might be worth picking up if you either really like the models, need the units, or have a good proxy for them. Support packs are only for one faction, but are not always consistent from faction to faction, containing about 4 or 5 models, usually a faction's doctor, engineer and 2 helper bots. Sometimes it may not contain a doctor, an engineer or helper bots. Combined Army, Ariadna and Aleph don't really follow this format because they either have a engineer/doctor combo unit or they don't have support bots. Or both models are doctors or engineer units. So are these worth picking up? Well, sorta. Faction doctors tend to be pretty naff except for Hak-Islam, where it's just basically a Ghulam, but the faction engineers tend to be pretty decent with helper bots, or they can link effectively like in Nomads and Pan-Oceania. As always, this will come down to what those who know the faction are recommending, but I think it's worth considering if you're getting a tag as an engineer. A PAL-bot can be a great bit of kit for supporting them. Expansion packs are a newer concept spawning from Code 1, but are also part of the regular N4 line. If you're starting with Code 1, these will help build out your Code 1 roster, or N4, a vanilla/generic army. The N4 ones are denoted as sectorial specific expansions, and instead throw 3 or 4 units together that you may want in the sectorial. Again, you'll be wanting to check if they're worth to pick up, but it's a good way to get some decent savings. They tend to be about 3 or 4 models with about 35 to 45 euros, so just over that €10 per model, but it can fluctuate depending on the metal used. Fireteam packs are a very similar concept to the above expansion pack, except they largely focus around building out and expanding fire teams that are made from the action pack. I don't know if Corvus Belli will continue this trend or just keep it with the expansion pack model, but you may want to use them to buff out a fire team. This is how you get some real heavyweights like the Evader Fuhrer pack or the Yalgat multi-sniper, along with a couple of chumps. There are 3 of these, which is why they're the same as above in terms of advice. Pick them up if they are needed to expand your force, and proxy is required. So reinforcement packs are the boxes to be specifically used with reinforcements, and will depend on how much your meta and local playgroup are playing that, but there may be some situations beyond that you may want to buy into it. If you're playing an out of production sectorial that has received some unit resculpts in these boxes, this becomes much more useful. Otherwise, only pick it up if you're wanting the 6 new models or you're playing reinforcements, which even then may depend on which faction you're playing. So that was my general purchase advice breakdown. I hope this was somewhat useful in getting you into Infinity. It's a really fun system and I enjoy it. Anyway, like and subscribe for more, and thank you so much for watching.